Hey guys, this is Dagon123, and welcome to
Tenchicast!
Welcome everyone to the next exciting episode of Tenchicast, presented by Tenchiforum.com. Every successful franchise is remembered for one thing or the other, but no legend is complete without an iconic soundtrack to accompany it, and Tenchi is certainly no stranger to unforgettable music and legendary melodies. Today with me, I am joined by Chuck.
Hello, everybody.
JG.
What's up?
Kiyoka.
Konnichiwa.
And Who.
Hello, Internet.
We're going to start off with the big one first. From 5 to 1, what were your favorite Tenchi Muyo tracks and why?
Oh man, this I have to say is by far the hardest question I have ever been asked on Tenchicast, just so you know how miserable you've made my life with this question, Dagon, in all jest, of course. This one was really difficult to come up with a top 5. I've done my best to try and come up with a very diverse and yet excellent group of songs, and it was just so difficult to come to 5. But I guess we'll see how it lines up with everyone else. My number 5 is actually the only background song in my top 5. It's from the third Tenchi movie, and its name is "Memory of Camellia." I really loved this one. It's the shortest one I have on my list. It's only about 2.5 minutes, and like I said, it's a background piece. But I thought this one fit extremely well with the tone of that particular film, which is one of my favorite iterations in any Tenchi continuity. And I just love it. Built up slowly, and you could sense the tragic backstory of Haruna and young Yosho, and the building of the theme, and eventually they have an accordion playing, and I just thought it really fit together. The song layered extremely well, and it was the perfect background piece in any of the movies I've seen so far, and that's why it was my number 5.
Well, this one was difficult for me too. It's a background piece of music from OVA 1, their soundtrack. It is Ryoko's theme. And I had a lot of other things in mind that kind of were fighting for that placement. Not to say that it's a bad song at all, but I think it kind of, compared to everything else I had a choice of, it kind of epitomizes more of Tenchi and the kind of lightheartedness and bouncy feeling of it. And once you start playing it, you can use it for so many things. I mean, we tried to use it for the OhioCon Tenchi panel. It's just a universally fun piece of music to listen to, and it's bouncy, and it doesn't grind on your ears or anything because it's so repetitive or anything like that. And they used it a lot throughout the different Tenchi series, so it's just like you could hear that song, this is going to be good stuff.
Yeah, chiming in here. Of course, this was a difficult list to compile, but for my number 5, I put down "Talent for Love." That's the English title.
Life is so full of hurry and hustle. Sometimes I think it's passing us by. The days are like hours like minutes.
And I think this is the first one we've mentioned on here, but don't quote me on that. But it's one of the many examples of where the the English version, the dub of Tenchi, went above and beyond what we see nowadays with a lot of dubs. And not only did they do a fantastic dub for the series, obviously, and the characters, but they turn around and they go that extra mile, and they did not only this song, but a lot of the songs, as I'm sure we will discover as the cast goes on. They had their respective English counterparts that were not just shadows of their Japanese originals, but I really feel that they stand out on their own in their own right. And this was just one that it was played in the ending of the OVA, and it was one of those ending songs where even after the episode is done, you keep the DVD, or if you're watching it online or what have you, you just keep it playing and you listen to this song, and I guess, at the risk of sounding goofy or cheesy, it's enchanting in a way. I mean, it really is, and it's kind of that fun spirit that is Tenchi Muyo.
If this was a top 10 list, it would have made my life a whole lot easier, but no, it's not easy now. Well, my number 5 was, I hope I said this right, Manatsu no Eve. That's the ending song to Daughter of Darkness. I can't really explain why I liked it precisely, but from a foreigner's point of view who can't remember the lyrics and what they mean, the way the build-up for the song goes, it sounds like a journey sort of thing. It's like a mysterious sound to it. I can't really say much more on it because I'm not sure how to put it, but that's basically why I like it.
Well, my number 5 is from Tenchi the movie, and it is the ending theme, which is Alchemy of Love.
Come to you across the divide, looking out a wrinkle in time.
Alchemy of Love, which was done by Christopher Frank, was just such an aware piece of music. Everything about Tenchi the movie was spot on for what they were trying to achieve. I mean, I made the statement in an earlier Tenchicast that it was it achieved what it did harder than the Death Star nailed Alderaan. So, I have a very high thought of this movie, and Christopher Frank knew exactly how to portray that in his soundtrack. And to end with Alchemy of Love, I don't think you honestly could have captured the quote-unquote anime made for the big screen in the 90s feel more than that song did. That's our number 5s, and now we're going to be heading into our number 4s.
Well, it's funny that I should be next because my number 4 is actually Alchemy of Love. I echo your sentiments entirely, Dagon. I very much thought that Christopher Frank did a fantastic job in his entire soundtrack for the first movie, but this song in particular stands out as just probably the pinnacle of that soundtrack. This one, as Who mentioned earlier, is one that got a Japanese and an English version, and I'm rather conciliatory. I like to say which one is best comes down to your individual point of view. This one, however, is one I feel pretty confident about saying that I think the English version is far and away better than the Japanese version. This one was one that just really hits you, especially after the emotional ending of that movie. It comes full circle, and it reminds you why you loved the characters, especially Achika and young Nobuyuki in the first place, and it was just the perfect ending to that movie. And like I said, way back in my very first Tenchicast in the first movie, I really think that Christopher Frank is the unsung hero of the first Tenchi movie. His score, and this song in particular, made that film.
Oh, this one's a difficult one because I could swap it around really easily. Position number 4 has got some competition. I'm gonna go with before I get into this, anybody who's watching this, take a look down below the video in our description, and we should have some links or some text that shows where you can go ahead and listen to these songs online, or we may have some clips in front of this so that you can kind of follow along with us. This one I'm going to suggest you go to animelyrics.com and look it up, but this will be from Tenchi in Tokyo, or Shin Tenchi Muyo, Yamanai, I can't pronounce it. Yamanai Ren something or another. Who help me out here? You can pronounce it. I can't.
I always said Yamarenanai, but I don't quote me as being right on that. But
Well, that's closer than I can get. In any case, it's the ending to Shin Tenchi Muyo, not the opening, and it kind of epitomizes the Tenchi community, I guess. Some of the lyrics are unstoppable, however old we might get. Unstoppable, even dead, even transformed, even born again. You know, it's talking about the different things that each of the cast, it's the entire cast from Kiyone through even Ryo Oki talking about what they love to do. And that even essentially, no matter how old they are, even if they tell us to stop, we're going to keep enjoying what we do. It's kind of got a hoedown theme to it. I mean, we're talking about banjos and so forth, but it's just fun to listen to. And like I said, it kind of epitomizes the Tenchi community over the years. Now, I've been around in it about 13 years now, and we're still going. So we're unstoppable.
Well, what's the fifth one was really hard to decide. My next four are actually ones that they either make me feel happy, sad, depending on the series. My favourite, number 4, is, I don't know the full title, but I think it's called Love Song, or I Can Hear a Love Song. And it's from the third movie, Tenchi Forever, or in Japanese, Tenchi Muyo in Love 2. Whenever I hear it, I think of the hardships the gang have faced and the happiness that ensures, basically. Because they're basically, at the end of the day, they're all a big family and they're there for each other through whatever happens. But that's basically how I interpret it, even though I know the lyrics are not that.
well, I gotta say this is really fun right off the bat. Having not knowing each other's lists before we did this. This is just fun to see how the diversity, but the similarities. Because for my number 4, again, Christopher Frank, and I totally agree with Chuck saying unsung hero. Definitely. For my number 4, Alchemy of Love did cross my mind, but I went ahead and I said Achika's theme. And the reason for that is just, I love Tenchi Muyo in Love, but that scene towards the end where, spoiler alert, hopefully people have seen it if they're listening to this, but where they've defeated Kane and they all have to go back to their own time, and they're all saying goodbye to Achika, and and Tenchi, it's the last interaction he has with his mother. Basically, he's not even quote unquote there. He's unconscious or what have you. And it's this really emotional scene, and it still chokes me up every time I watch it. And I think, like you guys said, in many ways, Christopher Frank, he just hit the nail on the head. And I think this is one instance where he really did. We had heard about Achika barely from secondhand inference from Tenchi Universe, so it was so wonderful to get to meet her in this movie, and I think you really can't say enough about how much Christopher Frank's score did for the movie and did for the character of Achika.
My number 4 is from Tenchi Universe, and it is the first thing that you hear in Tenchi Universe, and that is the opening.
Get ready, love will leave you crying. It's gonna hurt you till your heart is dying. Can't escape it, ain't no use in trying. No exceptions, love.
Otherwise referred to as the Tenchi TV opening, and I don't think it actually has a name other than Tenchi TV opening in Japanese or the Universe opening. The opening to Universe or Tenchi TV, it literally embodies everything that makes, what makes Tenchi Muyo fun. It's the perfect opening for Universe in that aspect. Very upbeat, very adventurous, and it fits Tenchi Universe like a glove. What better intro than an upbeat, adventurous, and done by Sonya, which was done completely in English and Japanese. And like I said, what better way to open up Universe? Now we're on to number 3s.
Dagon, you and I must be on some sort of the same brainwave, because my number 3 is actually you talked about the beginning of Universe. My number 3 is very much at the core of the end of Universe, and my number 3 is Dimension of Love. This is the song that really just jerks your heart, because it's the song that it plays in the background where at the very end of the last episode of Universe, where Ryoko comes back and she's standing there and she's alive, and Tenchi is just blown away, and she flies and sails into his arms, and they look together up to the sky, knowing that all of their friends are coming back, and the carnival has truly come around again. And that song perfectly fit that very emotional full circle feel to the conclusion of Universe. And I thought it was by far and away the best way to send out that great story from that great show. And that's why it's my number 3.
I'm going to have to go with the spin-off series, Duel. And you can debate me into the ground. I welcome the challenge. But I'm going to go with the Duel opening theme song, the parallel mix version. There's actually 3 versions of this, or 4 versions of the song: the TV size, the original, the Mitsuki's version that was done by the voice actresses for the 2 characters, and then the parallel mix. Frankly, it's just a fun song to listen to. I'll play it in my car, I'll play it on my TV and use it to work out too. It's got an awesome bass line to it and some synth, and it doesn't do anything amazing in terms of lyrics, but several group parts of the cast join into it at the end there. It's just a real fun song to listen to, and you can't really help stop your foot from playing around with it.
It's really difficult with this one because I didn't know which was going to 3 or 2, but at the end of the day, I think it's number 3's got to be the. I think it's actually called The Opening. And it's from Tenchi Muyo in Love, and it's played shortly after the intro of the film, where it shows you the school in the 70s and that. It's the only BGM on my list, actually, and I put it there because it's just for the purity of the sound. It sounds so peaceful, and how can you not feel relaxed when you hear that? I haven't got much else to say other than that.
Number 3 already, halfway there. Numero 3. Gosh, every one of these, I'm thinking, oh, I should have put that. Oh, you can't fit them all in a top 5. It's hard. But anyway, I digress. The opening for OVA 2, I'm a Pioneer. That's the or just Pioneer. That's the English title. Yet again, we have fantastic English vocals done by Sharon Scott, I believe, and I believe it was Chisa Yokoyama who does a lot of the Japanese originals. It's just a feel good song. It motivates you to watch the show, it gets you on board. But honestly, I think almost more than any of the other songs I have on my list, and this is when you know a song or a theme is phenomenal, is when it transcends its native environment. It's it means so much more to me than just within the context of the series Tenchi Muyo. Not that that doesn't mean a lot, obviously, but just the English lyrics. The first time I heard those, and then when I got back into Tenchi, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, as of this recording, just some of the lyrics, I'm sure we'll have links posted to them that it motivated me. Basically, without going into a lot of boring detail, it motivated me during a difficult time in my life when you're graduating college and you're deciding, what am I going to do with my life? What direction am I going to go? And am I going to take the easy way out, kind of? Or am I going to kind of, without, at the risk of sounding really, really corny, follow my dreams, and go for it? And this song, to me anyway, it says go for it. Be a pioneer. Don't just listen to the endless talkers, is how they say it. I guess nowadays we'd say the haters. But yeah, this song, it's just some days, even still, when I'm feeling down or unmotivated or whatever, I listen to this song and it's a complete 180. I am just up there and I am ready to take on the world. So that is my number 3.
Chuck, I have to absolutely agree with you that we have got to be on some kind of wavelength, because my number 3 is Dimension of Love from Universe. Pretty much what you said. Dimension of Love is a great capstone on Tenchi Universe. I've pretty much said it already, but every piece of music in Tenchi fits the scene it was intended to be in. It's so perfect that it's almost eerie. It's like an enigma. But what certainly isn't eerie is how heartfelt the song is. And with that upbeat, playful attitude that Universe has, it's just, I'll probably say it a million times more, it's just perfect. And everybody who has heard or watched Universe, and not to do spoilers, even though, Chuck kind of already did it, but when it starts playing, it starts off kind of soft, and then it builds up, and then it builds up. But it's not that build-up that is really kind of soft. It's like you hear the upbeat. It just hasn't gotten quite to its crescendo yet. And then, Tenchi's walking along, and you're like, man, I got a good feeling. And you feel that knot in your stomach kind of start to unravel. It starts to be like butterflies. And the minute that Tenchi turns around and Ryoko is there, and Dimension of Love goes into full blast, it's just like, it's amazing. There's no other words to describe it. That was number 3s, and here comes the number 2s.
I talked a lot about how this list was extremely hard for me to make, but this is probably the exception. The top 2 for me were always, and forever will always be, the easiest. I will always have my top 2 there was no thought involved. I just instinctively knew what they are. And my number 2 is The Lonely Moon. This one was the ending of OVA 2. This is the outro for OVA 2, and just the emotional depth of this song, it just trounces all of the other songs for me personally on this list, because just the emotion of the song, two lovers separated and unsure of their continued feelings, but yet every time they get back together, they understand why they were so meant for each other. And this is just a song for me that both the English and the Japanese version, I think, were equally spot on in their portrayal of just that great emotional depth to this song. And for me personally, it may be a bit biased because I just loved the outro video of OVA 2 with Ryo-Oki staring starry-eyed up into the constellations at night, and I just love that image, and just the imagery of lovers separated like the Earth and the Moon, and their eventual reuniting. It's for me. It was the perfect outro for any of the series, and I loved it to death, and that's why it was my number 2.
Well, now that everybody's run it over a couple of times, I'm going to have to go with Dimension of Love. And much like Dagon mentioned, and Chuck mentioned, and Who mentioned, and pretty much everybody's mentioned, it fit perfectly with the end of Universe. I mean, like you said, it starts out slow, and it blasts you at the apex of it, just when you had a hope that there might be something there. And I don't know, the words of the song, even so, there's a couple parts in it that are kind of off, but, you know, it's about two people, you know, hoping for the future and, you know, becoming lovers and going on an adventure from this point, starting into the, you know, from here on. And, you know, you can listen to it. It's a solid standpost of Tenchi. You can play that at probably most any anime convention, and somebody's going to recognize it. You know, it's classic. What can you do? You can't keep it out of your top 5.
Well, my number 2 is the Tenchi Universe opening. I slightly prefer the English version over the Japanese, but I both have them on my, you know, music list because sometimes I just like to listen to the Japanese lyrics and forget what they mean and just lose myself in it. I chose it because, well, others have said it embodies what Tenchi is all about. It's a funky, fun sound. You can't help but feel energetic and happy listening to it. It just embodies the positivity of Tenchi. And that's why it's my number 2, but unfortunately not my number 1.
Well, I think we're getting into some overlap here, but there's obvious reasons for that. These are all great songs, and like JG said, you know, how can you not have Dimension of Love in your top 5? Well, truth be told, you know, I mean, it's like they're almost like my children at this point. It's like, how do you pick? But you know, for variety's sake, I don't have that listed here because I'm pretty sure I couldn't say anything constructive after what you guys said. You hit the nail on the head. But for my number 2, pretty sure it's been mentioned already, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will agree with me here. Ryoko's theme. It describes Ryoko so well. Its namesake, obviously. It's playful. It's energetic. It's a little mysterious, and I feel it just captures Ryoko perfectly. And I also feel that in a lot of ways it's you know, it's very reminiscent of Tenchi as a series as well. And I'm not trying to hate. I'm not trying to say go Team Ryoko here, but I really feel that just the quality of this piece as such, and just its flavor, if you will, or its identity is just so strongly aligned with the series, kind of the whimsical nature of it. You know, Tenchi as a series has always impressed me with how cosmic and grand the scale of it is, and the plot. And yet there's these episodes like where they take care of Tenchi's little cousin, I think, where they're babysitting the kid. There's these episodes where it's just whimsical and fun, and it's it's why we love Tenchi. And I mean, no joke, I'm not even just trying to brag this up for this cast, but that's my ringtone right now. If you were to give me a jingle on my phone, you would hear Ryoko's theme coming from my pocket, which I think is awesome, because if I'm getting a call from a friend, I'm like, oh, great, positive feelings. If I'm getting a call from an employer saying, hey, we're not interested, it's like, well, that's okay. At least I got to listen to half of Ryoko's theme while I made you wait to pick up the phone. So that is my number 2.
Well, I would have to agree with a quote that is, great minds think alike, because like Who, My number 2 is Ryoko's theme, which is used throughout OVA 1 and Universe and OVA 2. Ryoko's theme is one of the flagship themes in Tenchi. It usually ends a funny scene with the gang, and a lot of the majority of the time, it's either the first thing that we hear right after the title card, or it's the last thing we hear before you end the credits. And the name of the theme is Ryoko's theme because the first time that we get that kind of opening, that taste of what Tenchi is in the first episode when Ryoko blows up a gas line, and that, you know, that comedic, playful, upbeat feel that can only be captured by the name Tenchi Muyo starts playing as Ryoko says, "Hey, that's no way to treat a lady." And that feel is just, that's Tenchi. You know, as soon as you hear that theme, you think upbeat, you think Washu making something crazy, Sasami's in the kitchen, Mihoshi is blowing something up or she's sleeping, and so on and so forth. And every time I hear it, or even hear about it, I can't help but smile, because it brings back so many nice memories, and it's just, like who said, it's completely positive. There's not one thing about it that just says, you know, man, that could be better. It's just like, yeah, Ryoko's theme. And now, finally, what everyone thought was their favorite Tenchi theme, the number ones.
Oh man, like I said before, there was never any doubt in my mind for this one. The very second I first heard this song, it was just a wow moment. It blew me away, and I have not stopped being impressed by this song. And it's been mentioned before by Kyoka. It was her number 5, but it's my number 1. It's Manatsu no Eve. It's the ending to the second Tenchi movie, and for me, the reason it beat out all the other ones is that it is by far the most fun, energetic, and just joyful song I have ever heard in Tenchi, or any anime in general. It's the images that play in the end, the happy Christmas images, and that it's that feel. It's the feeling of Christmas. You've just unwrapped a present, and it's the best. It's exactly what you wanted, and it's the best thing in the world at that time. And for me, this song just completely encapsulates that joy and just overwhelming happiness that comes with the holidays. And it just happened to be a Tenchi song, and that's why it's my number 1.
Well, I'm going to go against the grain here and repeat what like 4 other people have said, but I'm going to go with I Can Hear a Love Song from Tenchi Forever. It's hard to say that it really is a number 1 position amongst other things that I've got here and all that, but I mean, it fits. It's like if you have Dimension of Love as your number 2, it's fitting to have this as your number 1 because Tenchi Forever technically comes after Tenchi Universe. So it's not particularly even an upbeat song. It's about essentially one lover saying goodbye to another. But it's just the vocalist that sings it. It's just something that's enjoyable to listen to. It's kind of sad, but hopeful, I guess, at the same time. It fit the ending of the movie very well, even if it wasn't necessarily translated for us to read, unless you probably have the DVDs. But, you know, what can you really say? It fits just as well as Dimension of Love did to Ryoko's reappearance, which is essentially rehashed for the ending of Tenchi Forever, as she, you know, goes back to him and gets him again, you know, looking off into their future. But I think to some extent it applies maybe more to Ayaka than it does to Ryoko in some ways, being that it's talking about somebody parting, but, you know, who knows? But it's probably one of my favorites up there. Like I said, I can't be absolutely certain I would call it number 1, but yeah, it definitely belongs in the top 5.
I can tell you now, number 1 was a no-brainer. It's always been my number 1. And it is Alchemy of Love, the English version. Now, this is going to sound brave, but I think the English version is far superior to the Japanese. The English has more power to the voice, and the way the lyrics are brought across. I think there's more range of emotions, and I think her name's Nina, the singer. Her voice is just so alluring, and I just listened to the Japanese one before the cast started, and it's been 5 years since I've heard it, and it just doesn't sound on par to the English version. It sounds a bit, dare I say, amateurish. Sorry, fans. Also, the lyrics sound mighty, and the sound is so pure. I think it's a perfect mix, and when I hear it, it reminds me of the gang and how they stick together to these troubles. My number one, and it always will be.
Oh man, here we go. My number one, and you all probably gonna think I'm dorky or lame for picking this, but give me a minute. My number one is the theme, the opening theme for the original Tenchi Muyo OVA 1. And I will tell you why. Because I do mean the original, not the kind of weird. It was like a kind of a remixed version that they did for one of the I think it was one of the newer DVD releases. I don't know. That's off the top of my head. Maybe we'll have something in the description. But I immediately was like, no, I see what you did there. You thought it was. You thought we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Oh, it's close enough. But no, I caught him. So. The original theme, when I got back into Tenchi several years ago via YouTube, when you could actually easily find them on YouTube, and via Tenchiforum, I faintly had these memories, as I'm sure I've said on many other casts, of, oh yeah, there was that show. Yeah, what was that? Tenchi, that's what that show was. And I rediscover it, and I'll never forget that day. It was when I clicked on the first episode, and that opening theme starts, and they say, like, you're like smell or something of your five senses is most strongly attached to memory. I don't know what it was though. What was my sense of hearing here, because I heard that after not hearing it for years, and all of a sudden I didn't just remember Tenchi, I was transported back to 2000. I was literally transported back, and it just came flooding back to me, and I was instantly reabsorbed into it. And it has a very this might sound tacky, but it really does have a kind of an oriental theme to it. It uses a lot of traditional instruments. It has a very mysterious feel to it, which I think fits Tenchi very well. It was very sci-fi-esque, but it also blended the ancient with the cutting edge, or the science fantasy, if you will, very fantastic elements. And it's just indescribable for me how that will always be. If I didn't have my sense of sight, knock on wood, and if I had to pick one thing that I heard that just absolutely was representative of Tenchi Muyo, it would be that original theme. I think they just hit it right on the head from the very start. And so I think that will everything we've mentioned I love to death, and it's all good. That's why this has been so hard for everyone, I'm sure. But that is my number one.
Who, me and you, our number one and our number two. My number one was the OVA 1 opening, the original theme to Tenchi Muyo. And it will always be my number one, because it was the first thing, my first experience into this grand thing that has enveloped my life, and that is Tenchi Muyo. And it's a song that everybody knows, and there's no mistaking it. When you think of Ava, you think Cruel Angel Thesis, and as soon as it starts playing, your ears perk up, and everybody in the room knows exactly what it is. There's no double thinking it. And like Who mentioned, it takes you back. It takes you back to the very first time. Even if it's not the same feel, you get this rush of nostalgia that just kind of hits you and says, this is what it's all about. The orchestration of it is unique and has a very Japanese feel to it, like Who said, very oriental, but it's also very modern for what, at the time was 1992. So it has this, I've used the term 2 or 3 times now, it's an enigma. Everything about Tenchi Muyo is an enigma, and that theme perfectly embodies it because there's nothing that sounds like it before or after. It is very distinctly Tenchi Muyo, and no matter how many times I hear it, it always gives me goosebumps. Like, I always remember, no matter how far Tenchi goes, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 1,000 years, when Kajishima's head is in a jar, I will always remember it. I will always remember the first time that I heard that OVA 1 opening, and it always makes me happy, because it reminds me of just how awesome Tenchi is. We've talked a lot about there's the Japanese version and then there's the English version. Most times in an anime, they're lucky to have anything foreign in it, and its openings and endings, let alone anything else, more often than not with broken English, if they're lucky. Tenchi, on the other hand, not only had complete English openings for the majority of its series, but they were done by English speakers, people who could speak it very, very, very well, and could sing it just as good. And the soundtrack to the first movie was done by someone who wasn't Japanese. Like, it was, Christopher Frank, who I believe was German. What are your thoughts on the Japanese versus English themes in Tenchi, and did they affect how you viewed that series?
Well, like I said, we've sort of skirted this issue all throughout our lists, and I think it's like a calling card for Tenchi. I mean, how many other animes do you know where not only their openings, but their whole soundtracks were dubbed into English? And I mean, I'm not the biggest in-depth anime fan, but that's something special. That's something that Tenchi can own and really flout and say, this is part of what Tenchi is in the West. And for the most part, I think they did an excellent job. They did an excellent job of not only translating, but carrying over the feel and the emotion of the original songs. And I know some corners out there are probably saying, oh, well, they can't get everything over, and I would tend to agree. I think, objectively, the Japanese songs, more often than not, are better. The emotion comes through, and the feel is more genuine, I think. But it all comes down to personal preference, and I think there is absolutely no shame in thinking that the English versions are better, because sometimes they are, and it's part of what Tenchi is. Tenchi has English soundtracks, and it's just something that we really take for granted. And I'm glad that there's such a variety of opinion about this topic, because it's what makes us Tenchi fans different from any other fans of other anime. And that's my piece on it.
I'm going to have to disagree with Chuck on a couple of points. Not huge points, but technically there was only one soundtrack produced for the US that covered pretty much all of the Tenchi OSTs and so forth. And it was a little, like, it just said Tenchi Muyo literally on it. And it had stuff from, I think, everything, including Tenchi in Tokyo, I believe. It didn't have anything of the movies or some of that on there, but it was, compared to the massive amount of CDs that Tenchi Muyo has had produced for it over the years, which are all Japanese, you can't really say that we got stuff translated in the English, or we had complete soundtracks in English. We haven't. What we got was the rehash of the best album, essentially, which, if you compare the two track listings, are the same. So yes, I think for what they did in showing it on Toonami and to an English audience, Pioneer and AIC did an excellent job of making the choice to go ahead with it. And I think if they had probably stuck with the Japanese variations of like Dimension of Love and that, we would have probably lost a lot of our understanding or feeling towards that scene in Tenchi, because we wouldn't have understood what they were saying. I mean, sure, it would have sounded good. You know, I've got both versions. I've got probably 40 or 50 some odd Tenchi CDs digitally that I went through, and yeah, I can't say that the Japanese has as much hold on me. But to agree with Chuck on a point, it is personal preference. I mean, you know, depending on what series you're watching, I mean, you could be watching like Oh My Goddess or Ghost in the Shell or, you know, Duel or whatever, and you can try and do a comparison and see what you've got here, what you've got there, you know, in terms of English and Japanese crossover. And there's some cases where the Japanese is better, and there's some cases where the English is better. You know, it's like there were a lot of songs that people mentioned here just a few minutes ago, like The Alchemy of Love or Your Talent for Love or that. I can't say that I like those as much in some cases as the Japanese ones or whatever. I don't think they transliterated the lyrics quite as well as I would have liked. But yeah, there's certain pluses and minuses. It's just like the old argument of dubs versus subs. You know, it used to be that I could only watch dubs, and now I'm mostly into subs. Because, as Chuck said, the Japanese have a more illustrative language that's based on imagery, whereas English is not that way. It's a conglomeration of a bunch of different things. So, you know, to each their own.
I think that when I hear other animes, it's either one or the other. But in Tenchi's case, I think the Japanese and English are equal in most cases. Both are done professionally, translated well, I think, and sung by, well, the perfect singers. I think Pioneer did an amazing job of picking the singers. I mean, the singers sounded like they enjoyed themselves, not doing some mediocre, uninterested sound. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Sherilyn was the only English voice actor to sing. Which was the Pretty Sami Ove opening, and you know what, I prefer that over the Japanese one, which was done by Chisei Yokoyama, I believe it was. It was a real shame some were not done in English. I think Dagon's mentioned it, the Tenshin Tokyo opening. I would have loved to hear that in English. And also, well, as I said, the English usually is my favourite, but fun fact, I prefer the Japanese Dimension of Love to the English one. But as I said, the only one that really did not win me over was the Japanese Alchemy of Love, which I've stated already. And here's another fun fact, which Patria has mentioned. They tried to get her to do a Tenchi song. I can't remember what it was. It didn't go so well, let's say. But overall, I think Tenchi, English and Japanese, they've both done exceptionally well, and I don't think any other anime comes close.
But yeah, without getting too far into, I don't want to fall into a subs versus dubs trap. Obviously, I think everyone's done well of avoiding that. But I guess just towards, I think what the original question was like, you know, was it a different experience for you, or you know, comparing the two different experiences? You know, obviously, we're largely in the realm of subjective opinion, obviously, and purely, almost entirely for nostalgia reasons. You know, I prefer the dub of Tenchi just because of nostalgia, and so like a lot of the songs really fall into that category for me as well. That's how I heard them on Toonami, and so a lot of the memories and the good feeling, that's how nostalgia works, are attached to them. But you know, I'm very hard pressed to say a certain song is better in in the English version, because I guess technically I'm sure all of them at some level are aberrant readings of the original. So I think purely for pragmatic reasons, it's difficult to argue like a remake is better than the original because the original is the original, you know. But I digress. But I will say that having you know, re-experience like Tenchi I've now watched, you know, subbed. I obviously didn't do that when I was watching it the first go around over 10 years ago. And I will say with the subs and with the songs as well, I greatly enjoyed them, and you know they're phenomenal all around. But it is a slightly different experience, I will say. For you know, like I guess I've kind of gotten off track a little bit too much, but you know, Matt Miller is Tenchi to me. That's just how I'm used to hearing him, and I've associated that with him. And so I guess a lot of the songs, I guess that would be probably Sharon Scott again. With we mentioned the you know some of the songs with the dual singers, they both do it well. Or like the opening for Tenchi Universe, where it's the same singer doing both versions. I'm glad someone brought that up because that is phenomenal, phenomenal talent there. But yeah, I enjoy every song. I enjoy both versions. I don't want to sound too wishy-washy, like I'm trying to appeal to everyone, but I really do. They're all good. But I will say, just for purely my opinion, my biased opinion, because of nostalgia, a lot of times I prefer the English, you know. But that's just me, and those are my 2 cents on it.
I would have to say right away that I think that the English tracks fit Tenchi just as perfectly as the Japanese tracks do. I mean, even the fact that we're having this discussion right now, it would be one thing if it was, oh, you know, I don't like the way that Matt Miller did against Masami Kikuchi, but it's the themes themselves that we're able to look at so many and say, you know, oh, well, there's an English version and a Japanese version, and to kind of launch pad off of what JG said, when Chuck said that we had gotten entire soundtracks in English, he wasn't necessarily wrong, because all of the vocal themes in the OVA, sans OVA 3, were dubbed in English. Obviously, you can't dub an instrumental track. Every one of the themes in Universe that had a vocal track in Japanese were dubbed into English. And Pretty Sammy, the same way, completely in English. And it takes a lot for Pioneer, or any company really, to sit down and say, okay, we're gonna, you know, we're going to dub a show, but it's another thing entirely when every single vocal track for the first 5 years of the show existing got dubbed into English, and not just dubbed into English, but dubbed into English by fantastic English singers. Sharon Scott and Sherry Lynn even did it, and then so on and so forth. And it's different as an experience when you have an English opening, sure, but then say if we're to go through Universe and to go to the end where Dimension of Love is at, you know, how much more is it going to mean to you when not only is the opening in English, but then everything else is in English as well, and you're going through, and there's not a change of, you're not in a different mindset. You're going through it all on one wavelength. And I personally cannot imagine going through Tenchi and not hearing Talent for Love in, you know, not in English, because it's really far-sighted to, and really to think like, oh, you know, this is going to have a big Western appeal to it because everything is going to be in English. There's no barrier to entry. There's no, it's kind of like DBZ, although to a little bit more of an extent than DBZ, because so much was in English. It's a lot easier to digest. It's a lot easier to accommodate to people. It was perfect for Toonami in that respect. And obviously it's subjective, and people will say, you know, whether they like the Japanese or the English better, and that's perfectly okay. But I think in this instance, with Tenchi, it's not so much that, one, the Japanese was the intended version, but that both the English and the Japanese versions were intended to be seen that way. Tenchi wasn't just meant to be seen in Japanese, because its appeal is far greater than that. And Pioneer really pushed that forward by dubbing every single thing from 92 to 95 in English, so that way anybody could pick it up and it would have a broader appeal. And to kind of, throw in Christopher Frank again, unsung hero, just like it's been said before. The guy, he hadn't even seen Tenchi before he did Tenchi in Love. He was just picked up by the company Pioneer to do the soundtrack. And in my personal opinion, Christopher Frank is one of the most underrated composers of all time, because every movie he's ever done is 10 times better for it. He knows exactly how to play up a fast scene, to bring it down for a slow scene. He can say in music what most people can't say in words. And I think that really, really helped Tenchi the movie, but also the fact that there's no discrepancy. Like, you don't ever think, oh, well, this wasn't made by someone who didn't know Tenchi. He perfectly jumped into the spot, fit it like a glove. And when we're talking about something that's primarily Japanese, for someone who's not been around the show, for someone who's not been associated with the show, who is very much not Japanese, for him to play that part and to do it so well, I think speaks volumes about Tenchi's accessibility as much as how good Christopher Frank was.
If I could just jump in and reply to JG, I wasn't really trying to imply that we got tons of soundtracks on CDs or anything and we got this stuff translated. I was more referring to what Dagon was saying, that the entire soundtrack of what we heard when we watched the television was all in English. Case in point, it sadly and somewhat shamefully wasn't brought up by any of us, but Washu's Lullaby in OVA 2. It fit perfectly, and it was translated, and there was really no need. At least companies nowadays, an audience nowadays would say, oh, there's no need to translate that in English. People will just watch it and accept it as part of anime. But they went the extra mile, and they dubbed that song to make it even more appropriate to the audience that they were doing. And that's sort of what I was talking about when I say that we got the entire Tenchi soundtrack dubbed. I wasn't talking about CDs or booklets or anything.
Well, I figured that from the start, but I didn't want there to be a kind of a gross generalization there, because there's a lot of Tenchi music, and granted, you can't translate a background music song, but there is a ginormous amount of audio dramas. There's a ginormous amount of character songs where the cast is singing about whatever, because we don't really know what it is. Most of the stuff is not anime lyrics or some of the rest of it, because nobody over here got any of that. What we got is basically what you just said, Chuck, a TV soundtrack that conglomerated everything. And like I said, Pioneer didn't go to the extra effort of picking out certain songs. They already had a best of soundtrack, and then they just converted that and slapped a new label on it and sold it at Walmart, which is where I bought mine. And I discovered it and I was like, oh my gosh, I must get this. Mom, give me some change. So yeah, that's going back a ways, but I just don't want it to seem like, yeah, that's the only CD we've got. I mean, I think we might have gotten some CDs in the US since then for like maybe OVA 3 or maybe the movies or something, but almost everything. That's like the 1 percentile that we got. Everything else you have to import, and that's what I'm trying to get across, is that there's a ton more out there to experience in Tenchi Music Land than just that one disc that covers the main theme songs.
Of course, but I was talking about what we got, what we saw on TV, what we were all exposed to, because obviously we don't live in Japan. So, of what we saw, we got everything dubbed.
To jump in here before Kyoka, technically, JG, we did get more than that. Pioneer did release many things under the Tenchi label. They just, weren't available at like Walmart. They were available like Suncoast. Because I know all 3 of the movie soundtracks got released. The first movie got released like 2 or 3 different times. So, but anyway, go on, Kyoka.
Yeah, just to correct myself. As Jody said, Ellen Gastel did sing a song as well. And I think Patria, I'm just going to say the characters, Ryoko, Aika, and Washu, their English voice actors did do a bit of singing in one episode, I believe. But Sherry Lynn and Ellen Gastel were the only ones to actually sing a full-length song, unless I've messed up again and forgot.
Well, and that's a good point, Kyoko, because I get what you meant with Sherry Lynn. I think there's a difference there because Patria and KT Vogue and they were all like, I remember that episode, they were like singing karaoke, and so they were in character there, and I'm sure there's a big difference, not speaking from experience, from really singing for a a professional and for like a full length song versus like you're already doing a character and then they're directing you to like, okay, now this character is singing this part. So I'm just saying, I'm with you there. I get you.
Well, just a quick point on that. You say when they sang, I believe this is Sherilyn and Katie, Ellen Gastel, when they did their songs, I think they were trying to be in character, because there's no way Sherilyn sounded like Keone. She was doing Sasami. And Ellen Gastel, whether it was intentional or not, she sounded just like Mihoshi.
We spent a good amount of time discussing themes with vocals, but now we're going to look at the other half of Tenchi with the character themes and background music. What were some of your most memorable non-vocal tracks from Tenchi?
Oh man, I mean, I sort of feel like cheating because two of mine were already really talked about before, and that is Achika's theme from Tenchi Muyo in Love and Ryoko's theme from the various series. Both of these, I think, as was discussed, fit their characters perfectly, but were also able to become more than just a character theme. They became sort of a theme for their respective movies and series, and that's why I really love those. Another background music I would like to highlight would be Kageto's organ theme. I always really kind of liked that, the Baki-ness of it, the organ recital, and the entrance of Kageto. I think that's the name it's called on the soundtrack, Kageto's entrance or whatever. It perfectly captures his just menacing presence and the oncoming disaster of his visit to Earth. And I mean, at this point, you might as well just say the entire background music of OVA 1 and 2, because let's face it, all of them fit extremely perfectly, and I just named just one or two out of them that really struck me the most. But those would be my background musics.
I already mentioned Ryoko's theme as my fifth, but I didn't include Ryo-Oki, the OVA 1 theme, because I figured somebody else would bring it up and, crushed for space anyway. But I prefer the arranged version. It just sounds, it's got more oomph to it, and it's a lot clearer. You actually hear it on the Tenchicast opening instead of the original version. That was one, of course, everybody's already talked about that. It's iconic. Defeat. Which is also from OVA. That is played when the opening of the episode right after Ryo-Oki and Ayeka's core unit is blown up by Kageto and the Soja, and the next episode opens up with Ryoko sitting on the wreckage crying that Tenchi's been killed. I mean, you could play that anywhere and that scene would immediately come back to mind. To the Limit. From Universe is a nice, bouncy, kind of techie sounding song that's reused a lot there. Power of the Ruins from Duel. I've kind of always taken that as my Zen Virginbu theme song. It's a very kind of survive the onslaught, or keep standing up, keep going type theme. You got Tenchi's counterattack or the Wings of the Light Hawk. Those are both Tenchi ones from Kagato's battle that, you can just hear Kagato saying, "It's you! You're doing all of this!" And lastly, I'll mention Reminiscence, which is from a lot of the flashback videos in Tenchi OVA.
Well, what a question to ask without preparation. I've got, like other people I'm sure, lots of background tracks, and unfortunately some of them are not labelled, so I can't tell you what exactly they are, but most of the Tenchi songs, there's a particular sound in it, and you just can't help but smile as you listen to it. But for the songs I do have labelled, and I won't mention the one I've already mentioned in my top list, it goes without saying, I like Keone's theme, which I believe is actually played later on in the episode with the Knights. Anyway, one thing I would like to say about that is the quieter notes in it. It's almost hinting at Keone's almost mysterious character, because you don't know everything about her, and well, you don't know her past for starters as well. The second one I'll mention, it almost made my list, was Sasami's Nightmare. Can't remember exactly when it was played, but there's two parts to it. The first part is a slow sound, it's like you're feeling dread. The second part is where it's my favourite part of it. It's like the core of the situation hits you, and what hope you have is taken out of you with its powerful sound. The third one I like to mention, I don't know the name. I think it's called Kagato vs Yosho, and it's played when Yosho and Kagato in the OVA first fight. It's a very short track. I think it's 30 seconds. But oh my god, I'd love to have that on loop. It's just so lovely to hear.
Well, obviously, I guess the ones I mentioned in my top 5, but to not reiterate unnecessarily, I guess, I really enjoyed from the OVA, a lot of great ones mentioned, obviously, but I also really liked Ryo-Oki's theme. And that one was, you see, when we hear it for the first time is when we see Ryo-Oki for the first time, and when she hatches out of her egg, and it's just this adorable little fluff ball, and it's playful and it's comical, and I think the theme fits Ryo-Oki quite well. I think it's just a fun little tune to listen to, and I also really like from Tenchi Universe. I believe it's just called Peaceful Day. And
yeah, I think you're right.
Yes, thank you, Kyoka. And it's just, you hear it in the background all the time in Tenchi Universe, and it's just this really mellow, nice little theme that is often running in the background of what I think are some of the funniest moments of any Tenchi incarnation, and that is, more the domestic plots, where they're just like oh, Ryoko, you should be helping us do more chores. And Ryoko's like, no, I think I'm just gonna chill over here. And, basically nothing's happening. And I think it's one of those things where a lot of people don't notice it. And I think that speaks volumes about how fitting it is, because I think that's its purpose. It's kind of like, it's not supposed to be noticeable. It's just this ambiance that just helps lure you in, and it makes as the name suggests, it makes the peaceful, mundane moments of Tenchi Universe that much more enjoyable.
As far as I went, Kageto's organ theme, Kageto's organ recital, was really close to making it into the top 5. But, look at the competition that it had. It was close, but it just didn't quite get over the threshold. But, I can't think of anything that really makes a better impression on you before you're going up to like a boss fight than maniacal organ music playing. So, that was from OVA 1. From Universe, Me and Who, man, Peaceful Day. We first see it when we see Kiyone, and a lot of the time it's like Ryoko's theme. It's kind of used sometimes for comedic relief, but it's mainly for the slice of life aspect of Tenchi. The slow day atmosphere when there's not a bad guy attacking. Mihoshi is sleeping on the patio. Everyone is just kind of chilling, doing their own thing, and it's a peaceful day. It's a peaceful atmosphere, which mirrors the name of the title perfectly. And then one that I haven't heard but really made an impression on me was Tokimi's theme, or Tokimi is Watching, as it's referred to. It reminded me a lot of Metroid. Like, it has a very Metroid-y sci-fi space feel that I'm a sucker for. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. And it's very ethereal. It's very fantastic. Like, you're about to go up to a presence that you don't even know is really there, which is great because that's exactly what happens with Zero. And you're treated to this gigantic visage of something that is kind of like a high-pitched voice, but it echoes a little bit. And that theme, I think, really, really built up Tokimi, at least as far as OVA 2 went, very well. And that is just about it for No Need for Melody, Tenchicast 13. Does anybody have anything they would like to add?
Me. Just a quick question. When you said Peaceful Day, you hear it when we first see Kiyone. When was that?
I believe it was the first episode that she's introduced. Well, I mean, it may not have been the first time we hear, but like when she's walking towards the house and it's playing, I remember that very specifically.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, technically it's not the first song you hear, but whatever.
That's why we have Kiyone fans around.
I want to say, I had not even thought of it before you mentioned Dagon, but yeah, Tokimi is Watching. That is a good one. And now that you say it, I can definitely Metroid quality to it, and I'm a massive Metroid fan, so that just makes it even better in my mind. So I think you hit the nail right on the head on that one. I hadn't even thought of that. Wow.
Life and the vocal song Call from Duel is also very good for... I don't know about Call. Call's a very kind of sad song, but Life is a very common... it fits that same idea as Pleasant Day, pretty much.
Maybe just the music that always plays during the preview at the end of each Universe episode, the next time on Tenchi Universe. I just love that peppy little keyboard theme. I like that.
It's actually called Preview.
How about that?
It's a good one, Chuck. That was underrated in my mind, but now that I think of it, if I hear that, I'm instantly, I think preview. I'm like, oh, I got to pay attention. What's going to happen next episode?
Well, everyone, thank you so much for being in on Tenchicast. Everyone listening, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and be sure to check us out at Tenchiforum.com. Also, many members from Tenchiforum will be going to Otakon 2013 this year and will be cosplaying as dual characters. JG, if you'd like to elaborate.
Well, if you haven't already, you need to watch Dual Parallel Trouble Adventure. There's plenty of places online you can still find it. We've got a D, a Commander Sonata, and Koski, and maybe even a King Rara and some other people coming, but we're hoping to see any Tenchi cosplayers, any additional people that would like to cosplay Dual, since they're fairly easy costumes. Nothing super elaborate. A lot of it's like school uniforms or things like that. And, we're in need of some Mitskis right now if anybody wants to, jump in. But we hope it'll be a great time, and this will actually probably be the first time ever that the majority of all Tenchiforum related admins will be in one place, as we've got Bob from Bob N64 from the Sanctuary, and Dagon, of course, being the administrator of Tenchiforum, and me being the administrator of Dual Fans. So, a lot of brains in one place, I guess. Not to toot our own horn, but we hope to see you there.
For fans of Tenchiforum, as I call it, Tenchiforum Takes OhioCon, we won't be having a panel there, but we will certainly be doing our best to keep you up to date with any announcements that come out of Otakon. I know I was at Otakon last year along with our other forum member Mittens, and that was when we got the big Funimation announcement that they were re-releasing the show and subbing and dubbing War on Geminar. And so hopefully we can continue in 2013 Tenchi's revival at Otakon. So we'll keep abreast with all the latest news from Otakon, and stay tuned for Tenchiforum Takes Otakon.
Except me. I'm in England. I'm going to Ayakon.
Until next time, stay gold.